When you go into alignment, it's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that. The human body response is to escape. That's what all of our survival identities have been doing, is just running from what feels uncomfortable. But if you stay in that space of uncomfortable long enough to make it comfortable to be your new norm, that's where everything shifts. That's where you start not only seeing what alignment is, but feeling it. You start choosing instead of forcing things. You don't have to second guess it. That's where the self-trust starts to increase. Your voice of intuition increases. That's where the real silence in the mind starts to take place. Om Namah Shivaya, 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 Om Namah. Good day, beautiful people. Welcome back to Break the Cycles podcast, hosted by yours truly, Alisha Sheri. Thank you for joining today. And if this is your first time joining, this is a safe space where we have deep conversations around breaking generational patterns, healing from toxic relationships, and really diving deeper into your healing journey. Because let's be real, it definitely gets messy, it gets sad, and it gets lonely. So that's why I created this space. So if you're listening for the first time, please do follow and subscribe to this podcast on whatever streaming platform you're using. And if you are an existing follower and have been following this podcast, and there's something that you would like to listen or like me to discuss, please drop a comment so that I can address that topic. So today is obviously a solo cast. I kind of got this download the other day from God and the universe, and I think it's because a lot of us are going through our healing journey. We may be doing the motion, doing the work, meditating, creating space, and silencing the chaos by different modalities, whether it's breath work, yoga, meditating, maybe even changing our lifestyle to be more nourishing to our bodies. And those are all great things to overall regulate our nervous system, because that's where it really starts. And that's what we need to do in order to go deeper. There is no way to go deeper in your healing journey without regulation. However, I think a lot of us think if we just do that part, the regulation and getting us out of this fight or flight state, that's all we need to do. And that's why a lot of people do that, but they still feel like something is off. So why is that? That's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. So, as you guys all may be aware, and if you're not, I am the creator of the AAA method: awareness, alignment, and ascension. Don't mind my broken now. And we're going to talk mainly about the awareness and the ascension, the awareness to the alignment transformation today, because I think that's where a lot of us kind of get stuck. We do, we are putting things in motion. We feel calmer. Our nervous system feels like it's not in survival mode, but we still feel like something is off. So when we're in awareness, just to put it in a different context, imagine you grew up in an area, or maybe for me, I'm going to say a creek, because I grew up in the Eastern Sierras. There's a lot of creeks around where I lived. And we used to go to these creeks, drink water out of them because it's flowing water. It was probably the most refreshing water you're ever going to get. Came straight down from the mountains. But not only that, we would get to one side of the creek and we would sometimes cross it to shorter our distance to our next destination. And that's similar to awareness. You get to a path. You're aware that there's the body of water that you need to cross. However, How you're going to cross it is not going to always be the same way. Meaning the rocks may have shifted, the steps you take may not be the same exact steps. So you're aware that there is this body of water that you need to cross, but you don't know how you're going to cross it. Awareness is where we are connecting the dots. We are understanding. We know the body of water is there. Alignment is the journey to cross the water, right? So you have the awareness. I know that the body of water is there. I know that I'm probably going to cross this creek, but alignment is actually crossing the body of water. And how are you going to do that? Because it may not be the same way every time. The water may be higher, the water may be lower. You may have to roll up your pants, you may have to take off your shoes. You may have to take different steps depending where the rocks shifted or how fast the body of water is flowing. There's all these different things. So that's the alignment piece. How are you going to make it across? And I think the transformation from awareness is where a lot of people get stuck. But sometimes I think that could be that we rush the process of awareness because you cannot fix what you don't see. And I tell everybody that because a lot of people think, oh, I just need to regulate my nervous system. I just need to quiet the noise. No, you have to actually ask yourself some deep, hard questions. Whatever it is in your life that you are experiencing, let's say that you are repeating the same pattern of attracting the wrong partner, womanizers, narcissists, people who don't pour into you as much as you pour into them. Let's say you keep finding yourself in the same dead-end job, something that you just doesn't bring any fulfillment. Maybe at one point it did bring you fulfillment, but now you're just like, ugh, I don't want to go to work. Or maybe you're still going about your parenting wrong with your children, snapping at your kids, and don't understand why you get so irritable with them, even though you know they're just children. Whatever it is, and whatever pattern you keep repeating, the questions you got to ask is, why do you keep repeating them? And not only why, but where did this pattern start in your life? Because I can guarantee you it didn't just start now in your adulthood. It probably started somewhere in your childhood or in your teenager years, and it's something that you probably haven't built enough awareness around to address it and heal it at the root. That's the key word today, is healing at the root. And if we don't build that awareness, how do we put the motion and actions in place to get into alignment and stay in alignment? Because a lot of people go into alignment and then they just jump right back into awareness. So it's just teeter-totter. So awareness is connecting the dots, going back to not only your generation, maybe your parents, maybe your grandparents, as far back as you can go. Even understanding generational trauma. What did your ancestors go through growing up? Whether it was poverty, the war, whatever was happening in the world at the time, you can link ancestor trauma to where your ancestors were and the time they were there in that place. I got that question the other day and someone's like, well, what if I don't know my real family? What if I can't really go back? And that's how you can go back. Go back in time. Go back when your ancestors to a certain time and place where they were at and what was going on in the world, what was in the news. That's one way you can connect the dots. And it's really asking those uncomfortable questions and then listening. Or going back to your first experience of trauma and reliving it with your inner child. And that is uncomfortable. Building awareness means that you start seeing and listening to not just your mind, but your body. Because I get this a lot. I feel fine, but I just don't know. I still feel like I'm still short tempered or irritable, or I feel like my mind's still racing. I just don't understand. I'm doing all the work. Are you, though? And sometimes in our mind, because we're doing nervous system regulation, we're building our tools to regulate ourselves. But so sometimes that quiets the mind, but it doesn't quiet the body. And in order to feel like you're in alignment and you're living in alignment, both need to feel regulated. A lot of people misunderstand the fact that emotions and stressors hit our body before it hits our mind. We think it's the other way around because usually when something happens, like a stressor, someone makes you mad, someone cuts you off in traffic, someone messes up your coffee, whatever it is that irritates you, it's in our mind first, because that's where our mind has the first reaction, but it really hits our body first. And when it hits our body, if we don't feel it, accept it, and then release it, guess what? It just stays there. It's not like your mind where you can just think about an emotion, you're mad, okay, I'm going to cool down, let it go, boom, it's gone. It doesn't work like that in the body. That's not how the body works. And our body takes so many hits from stressors in daily life alone. So imagine how much builds up in a week, in a month, 3 months, 4 months, a year. So if you're not doing the right things to fully regulate your body, it's causing stagnation in your body. And how does your body communicate that? I always break it down into warnings first. Starts with warnings, just like everything else, right? So normally warning signs look like lockjaw, maybe nail biting, tension in the back, tightness in the chest. Maybe you're having digestive problems. You just always feel bloated and fatigued. And when you eat certain foods, you just can't fully digest it right. Your bowels may be off. Those are warning signs. And usually what's happening is these stressors are starting to decrease your energy flow in your body because you're not releasing them. They're just staying stored in there. And after warning signs, the stressors keep coming, more emotions are stored in the body. Now you go from a decrease in energy flow to barely, maybe little drops of energy trying to break through a wall, and it's fully blocked. It's let me flow through your body. So now those warnings went to alerts. And what does alerts look like? That's where you start feeling very irritable. You start snapping at your children or your coworkers or your partners, and even your reactions to yourself surprise you. You're like, whoa, where did that come from? It could also look like when nighttime comes, you can't go to sleep, or you fall asleep, but then you wake up at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning with your mind racing. You're always bracing for impact. You're trying to plan C, D, and E in case plan A and B fail. You're just constantly mind racing. And then after alerts, this is where it gets serious, okay? Because now at this point, you have no energy flow. Stressors keep coming in your body, and now there's no flow. There's just straight blockage. So now at this point, it's just building up. So now those alerts turn into threats. So what does threats look like? This is where it gets serious. This is where you start getting sick. Your immune system does not function as it should and could. This is where you may be more prone to not only illnesses, but mental health. And I've seen this directly in my family, where literally there's so much built up emotions in my family's bodies And I'm going to use my mom as an example because my mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia, anxiety disorder when I think she was like in her 30s, late 30s. And at the time, I didn't understand. I was like, why all of a sudden now? And now that I go back and I was connecting the dots, building the awareness, I understand that she had so much childhood trauma she never healed from that she was carrying with her. Not only that, ancestor trauma. Because as I'm doing my healing journey, I had to go back and connect the dots to my lineage. And on top of that, just her childhood trauma. She was in a lot of toxic relationships. She never got to live for herself. She was a people pleaser. She was always worried about everyone and everything but herself. And she got diagnosed with schizophrenia, anxiety disorder. And before that, I could see how her toes would cramp up. Like she would have these panic attacks. She would have anxiety attacks. She couldn't go into big crowds. She could barely go into stores sometimes. She couldn't really come to like my school activities or ceremonies. And on top of that, she was battling addiction, the drugs, the drinking, all the things that she was doing to suppress it and escape it was actually doing more damage to her body. And I would see where she would have these attacks and her toes would cramp up. And it was like her whole body would just go into the shock. And her toes would like literally hurt so bad that she would have to massage her feet. Or sometimes I would even have to massage her feet. So this is literally what it can do to you. And then years later, what happened? She got diagnosed with cancer. And she didn't win that battle. She was able to fight the schizophrenia anxiety disorder. She was able to fight the addiction. And she was clean. And she was off her meds for several years, over decades. And then she was diagnosed with a very rare form of cancer. 12 reported cases in the whole world. Not even enough statistics on it. Even though she was better mentally, she still didn't go back and heal her trauma. She still was people pleasing and not putting herself first. So she didn't win that battle to cancer. It was so aggressive. The most aggressive thing I've ever seen in my life. Take somebody just like that. And I'm not saying this to scare people. I'm just saying this because this is literally what I witnessed. And now that I'm in this space that I am and I do the work and I do energy healing and I understand, I've done so much research and study on how the body works, how energy is supposed to flow through it, being in the parasympathetic versus sympathetic state, the nervous system, how it needs to stay regulated, how we need to go back and heal at the root. You cannot bypass that. I've seen it firsthand. And so it's very important to understand how your body operates. The human body in general. So understand the signals, understand when your body's communicating to you, and don't let it get to the threats. Don't even let it get to the alerts. So next, let's talk about surviving versus thriving, because you hear that a lot where people are just doing that. They're surviving. I get a lot of clients that come to me and they break down because they're just like, I don't even know where to start. Barely have time for myself. I go to work and I come home and I'm a wife and I'm a mother. And I just feel like I'm pulled in every direction. And it's like, how do I make time for myself? For anyone listening to think that they can't give their self 20 minutes to an hour to their self every day, you're most likely in survival mode. Because there's definitely time. Even if you got to wake up earlier to give yourself that time, guess what? That's what you got to do. And I know a lot of you are probably like, I'm not a morning person. How am I going to get up earlier? I can barely get up now. That's why it's called change. That's why it's called practice. Because you got to practice it. Because I'll tell you what, I was definitely not a morning person. And then what happened in my healing journey, I found myself getting up at 4:30 a.m. to go to the gym. I didn't start there either. It took a lot of time to get there. But my point is, if you are the mother, you are the wife, and you are this career driven person where you have a high demanding job like I did, then sometimes you just got to give yourself, either you stay up late to give yourself that time or you wake up earlier. Either way, you probably need to fix your sleep routine, because surviving will look like that, exactly just like that. You're being pulled in every direction. You don't have time to do this. You feel like there's no time to just take a deep breath, even, which reality is, let's take a deep breath. It took 10 seconds, y'all. And sometimes those little micro shifts, such as taking a breath, they go a long ways. Okay? And your breath is always with you. It's something that no one can take from you. It's something that goes everywhere you go throughout the day. And there's different breathing techniques that you can do. But all I'm saying is that you got to give yourself space and time to connect with yourself. You got to give yourself space and time to regulate your nervous system. And that doesn't mean that breathing alone will do it. You need to build your toolkit with a bunch of tools that you enjoy doing. Because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to do it, right? So sometimes that looks like going to the gym when you're upset. A lot of people go before work, but actually sometimes if I was in a high demanding job and I would go after, because I'd be so ticked off most of the time. Blow off steam. Maybe you don't like the gym and you'd rather do yoga or stretching, or you'd rather walk outside or on a treadmill, whatever it is, move your body, break a sweat, get your heart rate up. And maybe it's being outside, maybe it's drawing, maybe it's coloring, maybe it's writing music, maybe it's singing songs, maybe it's dancing. We are all individuals for a reason, and that's because we are unique based off our background, our culture, our interest, our horoscope signs. What is your horoscope? What do you like to do? And this is where you can even get into human design to see what is your human design and your soul blueprint. That might help you understand who you are, because a lot of us don't know who we are until we do the work. A lot of my interests when I went through my healing journey actually surprised the heck out of me, because I didn't know that I was into a lot of things, and dancing was one of them. I just didn't know. So to get out of survival and to feel like you're thriving, you have to really reinvent yourself, because usually the norm that we're in and the things we like now doesn't even really align with our true authentic self. So what is something that you've always wanted to do? What is something that you might feel ashamed to do because you're an adult and you're a parent, but you're like, ooh, I'm too old to be doing that. One of my other things that I like to do was rollerblade. And I did that as a child. But what I realized, I stopped doing it as I got older, because I felt like, oh, my mom, I'm mature. I need to be an adult. I shouldn't be doing those things. Honey, there's skating rinks all over the place, and you can go skate as an adult. You can color with your children, or you can buy adult coloring books. It's not just for children. Okay? So you got to do the work and understand what's going to make you feel good. What's going to bring you pleasure? And I don't mean sexually, joy, happiness. What's going to help you focus? That's why a lot of people do color, because you have the focus to keep coloring in the lines, or drawing, right? Writing music, listening to music, all that stuff. Those are things that regulate your nervous system, and that is the only way you're going to get out of survival mode. So once you understand all of that, we go into alignment. This is where we start to cross into alignment. This is where the clarity comes. This is where you start taking action, even if it feels strange, right? And like I said, if you felt like doing things that you think are childish and you're too mature to do, This is where you do them anyways. Okay? This is where you might need to be a child, because maybe growing up you had your childhood taken from you. Maybe instead of being a little girl playing with dolls, you were too busy trying to find your next meal or find some money to buy a meal or whatever it was. You gotta feed that inner child, okay? And I think that was my problem. And luckily I had daughters, and what I found out was is I actually never really had to play with my dolls. And so having little girls, I used to play with my little girl a lot, and it brought me a lot of joy, not just for playing with her, but actually feeding my inner child, coloring, doing arts and crafts together, all these things. I created a whole bucket or had my whole storage full of like arts and crafts stuff that we would, Christmas time would come around, we would make things, or for the holidays, we would make things and do it yourself projects. And that was a way of feeding my inner child. Because remember, the things that you currently like doing, or the things that you like to do in survival mode, are the things that you've been doing because you were conditioned to do them. You either saw someone in your family do it, you were raised to do it that way. It's some generational patterns that got pushed down to you to do. So those are the things that you need to uncondition yourself from. So of course, when you go into alignment, it's not going to be comfortable. It's going to be like, ooh, I don't know if I want to do that. So the human body response is to escape, because that's what we've been doing in survival modes. That's what all of our survival identities have been doing, is just running from what feels uncomfortable. But if you stay in that space of uncomfortable long enough to make it comfortable, to be your new norm, that's where everything shifts. That's where you start not only seeing what alignment is, but feeling it. That's where you start choosing instead of forcing things. That's where you start feeling certain about things, and you don't have to second guess it. That's where the self-trust starts to increase. That's where your voice of intuition increases. That's where the real silence in the mind starts to take place. And your self-trust and that voice of intuition increases. So decisions come natural because you feel it. That's where you feel it because, ooh, I think this person's good for me because I don't feel this tightness in my chest. I don't feel guarded. Okay? You get messages, downloads, synchronicities, all of that. Maybe synchronicities come in so many forms. It can be shapes, it can be animals, it can be numbers. But you are so inclined with it, you don't miss them anymore. We all get these signs and these downloads, by the way. But when we're in survival mode, we don't see nothing. We don't see nothing but the next action we need to take on. And sometimes we don't even see that. We just go on with the motion. Go with the motion. So when you're stepping into alignment, it feels like this teeter-totter, right? You're like awareness, alignment, awareness, alignment. Do I want to stay here? No, I want to go back to awareness. I want to stay here. No. And that's where I think people get stuck. That's where I think people feel like something's off, because it is. You keep running from your new norm. That's what's off. Or you keep running from your wounds that you have not healed. You've been putting Band-Aids on it. You might have been cleaning it with alcohol and peroxide, but guess what? The wound opened up again and you just left it there to bleed. You got to go back and heal the wound, okay? The right way. Heal it at the root, so that it closes up and it turns into a scar. Because scars don't go away, baby. But wounds, they do. And as we go into alignment, whatever change you're trying to implement in your life, or new things you're trying, don't try to just jump into it. Okay? The key of staying in alignment is not overwhelming your nervous system. Okay, because like we said, your nervous system is conditioned and it's repeating the patterns because it's familiar. So you're creating a whole new norm. So you got to do baby steps. You got to meet yourself where you're at, not where you're trying to go. An example, let's say that you want to move your body more. You want to go to the gym more. Don't start going to the gym 5 days a week for 2 hours, okay? Because you saw some influencer on IG tell you that's how she does it or he does it. What they're not showing you on IG is how they got there, okay? So meet yourself where you're at. If you're not active every day, start with walking. Start with a light jog. Do it for 10 minutes. Maybe you start on the treadmill for 10 minutes, or maybe you just start walking half a mile a day for twice a week, not every day. Okay? Don't overwhelm yourself or your nervous system. And then you do it for 10 minutes twice a week. Okay? And then you're like, okay, this feels good. The next week you're like, I'm going to try to do another day. Okay? You do it 10 minutes for 3 days a week. And then before you know it, those 10 minutes bump up to 20, then 20 to 30. Before you know that, you're in the gym, maybe an hour, 3 times a week. You do that for about a month, a few months or something until you don't feel like you're doing too much. And then you just keep going from there. Next thing you know, you're okay. You're at 5 times a week for an hour a day. And now it's just part of your lifestyle. That's the proper way to implement change. Meet yourself where you're at, not where you're trying to go. Because 90% of the time you're going to fail if you try to meet yourself where you're trying to go. Okay? These are all called practices because you have to practice them until they become comfortable to be your new norm. Okay? And while you're doing these changes, the most important thing is to have compassion and give yourself space. Remember, you are unconditioning everything you've been conditioned to do. You are literally building yourself from the inside out. And that is a lot. So always have compassion for yourself. And that's the next thing, is building yourself from the inside out. So celebrate all your small wins. I don't care if it's that I only did it twice this week instead of 3 times. Guess what, sweetie? You wouldn't have done it at all if it was a few months ago or whenever you started. So be thankful and be grateful that you still did it twice this week. Yeah, your goal was 3, but that's not the point. The point is that you're still building, you're still going, you're still disciplined enough to show up twice a week. And that is a lot when you haven't showed up for yourself in the last few years or whenever. Celebrate your small wins. And if you fall off, just get back up. Because the only way that change sticks is learning through our failures. If you did fall off and you quit for a few weeks, how did you feel in those few weeks when you didn't go to the gym or you didn't move your body or you didn't meditate? Whatever your goal was, how did it make you feel? Probably not good. Not as good as it felt when you did go. So understand that and then take that with you. But pick yourself up and just do it again. And remember, alignment is not perfection. You're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. It's progression, progress, step by step progress. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. So don't be hard on yourself. And I know for a lot of us, we are our worst critics. I know I for sure was. And I used to justify it because I'm like, well, I'm not criticizing anybody else. I'm criticizing myself. But that's the worst thing, actually, when you criticize yourself. So turn those critics into positivity. And don't be hard on yourself. There has to be a balance to instill enough discipline, to have compassion, to continue to keep going, and building space to find your true authentic self, because she was always there. This is not somebody you're creating. Hey there, sis. If you've been noticing the same emotional patterns repeating, feeling disconnected from yourself, or sensing that something within you is ready to rise, I want to invite you into something intentional. I've created a 3-day guided experience called Awaken Your Highest Self. This isn't a live workshop, it's a self paced container designed to support real transformation. You will receive instant access to day 1, and then day 2 and day 3 will unlock each day. So you can actually integrate what you're learning and not just consume it. Each day includes guided teachings and worksheets to help you build awareness of the cycles holding you back, regulate your energy, and step into deeper alignment with who you're becoming. This isn't about fixing yourself, it's about remembering who you are. You can begin anytime at alishasheri.com/workshop. So before we close today, I just want to end with a quick guided meditation. Because remember, our true authentic self is always with us and always has been with us. And we're not, as we go through our healing journey, we're not creating someone new. No, we are reconnecting with our highest self because she's always been there. So if you can, and it is safe to do, close your eyes with me. Take a deep breath through your nose. Sigh, exhale through your mouth. Let it out. Repeat that again. As you exhale, drop your shoulders. Maybe roll your neck. Repeat that breath again. Inhale through the nose. Open mouth, sigh, exhale. Let it out. Now imagine you're outside. Just you alone. And in front of you is this steep, rocky hill. And at the top of this hill, you see this picture, and you can't really make it out. But your mind is curious on what it is. So you start walking towards that picture. And it's just at the top of this hill. It's a Canva just on this stand. And you're walking. But suddenly you feel this heaviness, like you're wearing an armor or a weight. And as you walk, the hill is steeper. But you keep going, step by step. And you might need to take a break because it's hot. You're sweating. And you're breathing hard. And you're tired. But after you stop for a few moments, you keep going. You're very determined to get to that picture. And you're getting closer and closer, step by step. And as you look, the picture starts to kind of come into the silhouette of a person. But you still don't know who it is. So you continue to walk. And then you look above and you're like, where did the sun go? The sun stops shining. And this dark cloud is now above you. But you're still climbing step by step. And by this time, the hill is just so steep that you need to take more breaks. Then all of a sudden, just rain comes out of nowhere, pouring down on you. But you still keep going. And it's pouring. And you're wet. And you're hot. And it's muggy. And the armor is heavy. But you're still climbing the hill. Step by step. The picture looks a little bit clearer, but you still don't know who it is. So you continue to climb. And then all of a sudden, a piece of the armor broke. It breaks off and falls. You feel a little lighter. You're like, okay. It stopped raining. The cloud is moving. You're looking at the sky like, okay. You keep going. And another piece of the armor falls. And by now you feel a lot lighter. You feel like you can relax a little bit, even though this hill is still steep. But your breath is starting to come back normal. You're not out of breath. Your heart rate starts to decrease a little bit back to normal. You don't feel as tired. And the sun is coming through as the clouds move by. And you're almost at the top. You keep going, step by step. Another piece of the armor falls. And you look down and you notice there's only one piece of the armor left. So you feel so light. You're able to go a little faster. You feel a little cooler. You're able to move faster and take less breaks. So you keep going. And finally, the clouds pass by. The sun is shining. You feel this cool breeze. And that last piece of the armor falls. And then next thing you know, you look up. That picture is your highest self. Welcome. And that's how it all works. Your healing journey is not about perfection. It's about discipline. It's about not giving up. And it's about rebuilding yourself from the inside out. Getting yourself out of survival. Regulating your nervous system. Creating space and having compassion for yourself. Having faith. Quieting the noise. Building self-trust and increasing your voice of intuition. So you can meet your highest self. Not create her. Because she was always with you. And she's going to continue to be with you. So, continue to build awareness. Continue to choose alignment. And remember, she's always within you. I'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks for joining.